Hello the world, hello the internet, hello to Jason Isaacs, hello to everybody out there that's interested in politics and indeed liberalism. This is Paul Talks Politics. I'm Paul and this is where I talk politics, so I should probably start talking politics. And today I'm going to talk about liberalism. Now, it is my humble estimation, and I speak as a teacher, that there's a tendency on politics teachers to somewhat overcomplicate the teaching of ideologies at A level. I know I've done it because we just want to get into the subject in a huge amount of detail. Speaking as an examiner, switching hats onto the examiner, you know what the examiner just wants to see is a clear and cogent journey, if you like, through the big ideas within any ideology. And that's what I'm going to try to give you today. So today's video is going to be broken into two parts. The first is going to be about classical liberalism. The second is going to be about modern liberalism, and it will give A-level students all the tools they need to frame a big argument about liberalism. There's going to be a bit of work that you're going to have to do off your own bat, filling in a couple of gaps, but you've got all of the resources you need to do that. And maybe if there's some higher level students who are looking at this video as well, I hope it's helping, because it's about big ideas. You don't want to get stuck in the weeds. It's very, very easy to do that in an essay on any ideology, because the temptation to go deep into it can be hard to resist. We've all done it. Anyway, that's enough from me by way of introduction. I'll be right back with my discussion of classical liberalism right after the introduction. When we finish that, we'll get on with modern liberalism. But right now, intro and back with the good stuff. Don't touch that dial. See you in a little bit. See you now. And we're back. So liberalism. Let's start with liberalism. But before we start with liberalism in particular, let me just make a couple of things clear. First of all, when you are dealing with an ideology, any ideology, there are two distinct starting points we probably want to discuss. The first is the intellectual starting point, if you like, the idea that's going to help you understand or unlock your understanding of that particular ideology. And in every instance, that's going to be human nature. You start with human nature. Now, when you start an essay on that ideology, you're going to start from a different point. I wish it was simpler, but if it were, then where's the fun in that? But we'll deal with that in a second. What we're going to deal with right now is this idea of human nature, because when you've got your human nature ideal nailed down, that is going to inform how your society works, and it's going to inform how your ideology works. So understand the human nature, and ideology and society and the economy follow from that. Now, once you've got those dialed in, the next thing that follows is obviously the state, because the state's role is going to be defined entirely by the economy and society. So what the state does is entirely dependent on how your society and your economy are supposed to function. So we start with human nature. Human nature defines society and the economy, and then the role of the state will be determined by what you actually expect from your society and your economy. And that is the same whatever ideology you're looking at, because the state's role will always be managing society and managing the state. So that's in terms of getting your head around any ideology. Let's proceed with what that actually means for liberalism. So with liberalism, we start with the individual, of course, and the critical idea there is that the individual is sovereign. We'll explain what that means in a slide or so, but essentially what you're looking at there are individuals who can't be told what to do by anybody else. Nobody has the intrinsic authority to tell somebody to do something that they do not want to do. That is the fundamental premise, if you like, of the liberal state. That leads us into a social model that is essentially contractual, and an economic model that sees the economy largely as simply a means of exchange. And the job of the state is to regulate that contractual society and the economy, which we do through upholding rights. That is what the state is there to do. The state is there as a liberal to uphold your rights, and that is it. Get your head around that, and you're going to be in pretty good shape. So let's crack on with this idea of human nature. And I talked about sovereignty. How do we get to that idea of sovereignty? And we get to sovereignty in a sequence of 2-3 steps. We start with the idea of equality, specifically the idea that everyone has equal moral and political value. Nobody is better than anybody else. Nobody should have more nobody should have more political authority than anybody else. These are the ideas of the Enlightenment, of the Renaissance, when we're seeking to couch our ideas of existence in a framework that can exist independent of God, or indeed reference to any other higher power. So we say that all individuals are equal. They have equal moral and political worth. And we add to that the idea that they are rational. All individuals are capable of thinking for themselves, making their own decisions, determining their own goals and identities. And as an addendum to that they are a tabula rasa, that is, they are a blank slate. They are neither good nor bad. They just get on with things. They make decisions. Some of those decisions are good, some of those decisions are less good. But they're not evil, they're not benign, they are simply rational. They make decisions based upon their hopes, wants, needs and desires, which they have of course identified from themselves. And if you take those two ideas in combination and you add them together, then you come up with this idea of sovereignty. And here is your first thinker coming in. This is J.S. Mill over here, in case you were wondering. And he said, and you'll have to excuse the casual sexism, over himself and his own body and mind, the individual is sovereign. Putting that to one side, it's beautifully expressed. So nobody has any authority, or certainly nobody has the intrinsic authority to tell you to do something that you do not want to do. And that nature of intrinsic and extrinsic authority in liberalism is really, really, really important. And we'll come back to that again and again and again. But fundamentally, human nature, we're thinking about sovereignty, individual sovereignty based upon equality and rationality. That's the foundation. You get that sorted and you're off to a really, really good start in terms of understanding liberalism. Tie that with that little quotation there from J.S. Mill and you couldn't get off to a better start. So that's good. Let's move on now to society. When it comes to society, we've got, again, 3 building blocks of this particular idea. We start off with the concept, as we alluded to in the last section, that we're dealing with sovereign individuals here. And our society is essentially a conglomeration or an accumulation, or if you want, a collection of sovereign individuals. They've all come together. Having achieved that, we have to recognize that they are all autonomous agents. They're all doing their own thing. There's no sort of single direction for society. Rather, this is a conglomeration of autonomous agents. Think of a shopping centre, or think of Tesco's. It's filled with individuals who are just there to do their shopping. There's no sort of ultimate goal. They're just there to wander around, not get in each other's way, and get out, having done their thing. They're all autonomous. No one's trying to create anything special. No one's trying to do anything special. They're just fulfilling their own particular agenda, whether it's buying a tin of beans or a pack of ham. Doesn't really matter. That's what they're there for. And when you get into that shop or shopping centre, you follow a basic set of rules. You get out of my way, I'll get out of your way. You don't take stuff out of my basket, I won't take stuff out of your basket. Contractual. We have an understanding. You do your thing, I do my thing, and as long as no one's crashing into each other, then we're going to be okay. So those are the 3 building blocks. Let's go into each of them now in a little bit more detail. So, society is a collection of sovereign individuals. That means that each individual, as we discussed earlier, has equal moral and political worth. They are all agents, essentially, exercising moral decisions and political decisions. A critical corollary of this is that all of the rights that these people hold, they're held as individuals. not as collectives. There are no collective rights in a liberal model. And this is very, very important when you're looking at stuff in democracy and rights in the other aspects of the course, when you're asked to juggle or to evaluate the extent to which individual rights are prioritised over collective rights. In the UK, we don't have any collective rights. In any liberal society, you don't have collective rights. The government has an obligation to create security and safety, but that's not the same as collective rights. So in a liberal democracy, rights are held by individuals because they are equal political and moral agents. And if you have collective rights, then obviously the individual is going to be secondary to the collective, which means that the individual is a means to an end. It means you're moving towards some sort of totalitarian state, communism or fascism. But no, we're dealing with autonomous agents, and we recognize that all of these individuals are capable of thinking for themselves. That's why they've got that agency. And from that, it follows that they are obviously able to set their own goals. They don't need anybody else to tell them what to do. More than happy of going into the shops and thinking, oh, well, I want some beans. Oh, no, hang on. I want something else instead. They're capable of making these decisions for themselves. They don't need reference to anybody else. They don't need anybody holding their hand. They don't need anybody helping them towards the till. They're capable of making their own way through the shops. But what we need to make sure is that when we're going through those shops, we're not getting in each other's way. We are behaving ourselves. And so we have what Ferdinand Tonnes, I'll write that down. He is a German, and Tonnes. He was a German sociologist, and he described 3 different social models. This is the first one that we're going to come across. Probably the only one we're going to use in this particular presentation, a Gesellschaft, where the links between the individuals are contractual. They're not empathetic. There's no sort of social feeling. It's just a simple contractual thing. You stay out of my way, and I will stay out of yours. And that leads to a very, very important concept. Remember, I'm staying out of your way, so I expect you to stay out of mine. These rights are reciprocal. I have a right, you have a duty to respect, but my right. Similarly, you have a right, and I have a duty to respect your right. So society in this classical liberal model is based entirely on contractual ideas. I don't care about these other people. I don't care about them. They don't care about me. That's fine. I am just setting my own goals. I'm going about my own thing. I have my rights. There are no collective rights. And society in that sense is perfect and atomic. And we all just get along perfectly well as long as we're not getting in each other's way. That brings us to the concept of the harm principle, which was J.S. Mill's idea, that as long as I'm not getting in anybody else's way, then that is no business of anybody else. I will just get on and do my thing. If I'm not harming anybody else, however we choose to define harm, that's in the weeds, don't go there. As long as I'm not causing anybody else harm, then I am allowed to do my own thing. This is rights. These are civil rights, and specifically in this context, we call them negative rights. Not because they are bad, not because they have any pejorative association, but just because they involve people not getting in my way. People just letting me do my thing. And those we call negative rights. That's very, very important later, so hang on to that. We're going to move on to the economy. The economy is a quick one and an easy one, and it's coming up right next. So the really good news is that all of the stuff we just did on society works really, really well in the economy. We recognize that the economy is a mechanism of exchange. Again, we have the idea of autonomous agency and contract at the back. So a mechanism of exchange. I've got some stuff, you've got some stuff. Why don't we exchange? The market itself is of no value. The market itself has no intrinsic value. All it serves is a means to an end. That ends being me coming and swapping my stuff with you. That's what the economy is for. Nothing else. It's not about generating good stuff. It's not about generating bad stuff. It simply means we're independent, autonomous agents who have a very good idea of what they want can come and work together. And, well, not work together, sorry, exchange their stuff. So the economy is contractual. Again, it's a Gesellschaft. The links between the individuals are contractual rather than empathetic or social. And we respect property rights. My property rights are absolute. You don't take my stuff, I don't take your stuff. We are happy. So again, we're looking at negative rights. The idea that my rights are defined by you not getting involved. Nobody else is getting involved. Nobody is taking my stuff. We have very, very simple atomistic model of society. All these little agents going around doing their own thing, entirely independent of anybody else. And yeah, that is your liberal model of the economy. Hope that makes sense. Liberalism in the state. Hopefully by now it should be clear that when it comes to liberalism in the states, we're looking at very much a minimal role. The job of the state is not about improving people or taking them on a journey or anything like that. Absolutely not. It's simply about upholding rights. We define the role of the state as upholding those rights. The idea that I have my negative rights, nobody else intrudes on me, I just do my own thing. And if I'm doing my thing and you're doing your thing, then frankly, everybody's happy. We accept that the state is a necessary evil. We'd rather not have the state because power corrupts and absolute power corrupts absolutely. But someone's got to make sure that we uphold all of those rights. So what does all of this mean? Let's go into this in slightly more detail. Well, power corrupts and absolute power corrupts absolutely. We don't want a big state. The more power we give it, the more power it's going to want. We are all autonomous agents. We don't really need the assistance of the state at any stage. We can make decisions for our own, for ourselves. And so we have the limited role. That is the night watchman state. That's a phrase from J.S. Locke. Clang. There's another thinker for you when it comes to liberalism. So the job of the state then is to uphold rights. We are talking here exclusively about negative rights. We're talking about the rule of law, the idea that everybody is bound by this same contract, and the state's job is to uphold rights consistently across the entire model. And we recognize a difference between liberty and license, between order and chaos, between the state and anarchy, if you like. So there's freedom and then there's madness off the back of that. So the state's job is to make sure that we hold these social structures in place so that within those limits we can do whatever it is that we want to do. We recognize that the state is a necessary evil. We need the state because not J.S. Mill at all. Rather, Isaiah Berlin famously said, freedom for the wolves means death for the sheep. The job of the state is balancing order with freedom, and that idea again of reciprocal rights becomes very much important in that. And how do we hold our state to account? Well, we hold the state to account through democracy and the contract and constitution. And again, those are key ideas in a liberal model. That's how we hold our state accountable. And that's about it, to be brutally honest. Again, you can make it much, much, much more complicated, but as long as you remember that the individual is sovereign, and that leads to a contractual society, and then we have a means of exchange. The economy is really just a means of exchange, and the job of the state is to uphold rights, those rights in society and those rights in the economy. Then you're pretty much there. Add to that a couple of thinkers, particularly thinkers from the main set, and yeah, you are done. That's it for classical liberalism. We'll come back in the next video with modern liberalism. I look forward to seeing you there. We're going to bow out over the introduction as ever. Please like and subscribe. Please tell your friends. If you don't like this, then tell me, and I'm big enough to roll with those particular punches. But thanks for getting to the end, and I'll see you in the next video.